Welcome back to the channel. Before I start, I'm doing this and I'm reading the script, so if I'm looking down, that's where I'm going. So just to make sure, before we start, hit the subscribe button, like this video, comment. I want to know what you guys think about what I'm about to say. So let's go. So today we're talking about apologetics. Many of you subscribe to the channel are to some degree aware of my background. In college, I went through a stint of doubt and eventually became an agnostic. So I didn't know what I believed about Christianity. I didn't know if Jesus existed. I didn't know if what the Gospels said about him was reliable. The books in the New Testament canon, were they written early enough to justify the belief that they were possibly written within the lifetimes of the eyewitnesses? How can we know what we ought to trust? How can we know that we ought to trust Paul? Did 500 people actually see a post-mortem Jesus? Are the pseudo-Pauline letters forgeries? Should they even be called pseudo-Pauline? Why don't the Gospels internally name who wrote them? Can we really be sure that Jesus was born of a virgin? Or did he even do miracles? So I've heard all of the objections and questions that skeptics, both scholarly and YouTubers alike, have levied against my faith. And I've read the scholarly responses and cases by people defending the authenticity and reliability of the Gospels and other New Testament books, and of the existence of Jesus, supposed contradictions in the narratives, and supposed historical errors in the text. But in all honesty, I've come to this conclusion. Do I believe that Jesus existed? Yes. Do I believe that historically I can make a case for this resurrection? No, not really. Not because there isn't a case not because there isn't a case there, but because as I have looked at the literature from both sides, I just don't know who's right. Both sides make good points in my opinion. So where I am at this moment in time, evidentially speaking, is I'm agnostic on the idea that we can, without any reasonable doubt, prove that Jesus' resurrection actually happened. I'm not convinced, but do I believe it? Absolutely. Yes. Because I have honestly had an encounter with the risen Christ that confirms, to me at least, that the resurrection actually happened in my mind. So I am more than convinced of the truth of Christianity, but I also hold that people are reasonable to look at the evidence and come out unconvinced. That's very controversial, I know. But not denying it straight out, but at least being agnostic about it. So for that reason, I don't engage in apologetics of defending the resurrection of Christ, because what confirmed it for me wasn't really the historical case, but religious experiences that confirms it to be true for me. I don't knock those who give historical defenses for the resurrection. By all means, have at it. Perhaps my non-convincing is a byproduct of my own ignorance of the subject. After all, there are PhDs doing that work, but as for me, I won't argue for something of which I myself don't truly believe and can be defended to a particular conclusion. So I made this video because, many have asked me why I don't engage in apologetics, and it's because I don't believe they work for me. And if they don't work for me, then I wouldn't try and get them to work for other people. If anyone asks, or to recommend apologetic resources for the historicity of the resurrection or for the reliability of the Gospels, I wouldn't hesitate to point them to books that I've read in the past. Maybe that information will persuade them, but it didn't persuade me. At least it doesn't persuade me now, the more and more that I've researched and I've thought about the subject. But as for me, I don't know. Christian apologetics, I don't do it. However, I am indeed very interested in philosophy of religion and metaphysics, and I think there are good arguments for God's existence. But in my opinion, evidence for classical theism, which is what I believe, I'm not a neoclassical theist. Classical theism being true, to me at least, has better evidence for it as opposed to Christianity being true, the evidence for Christianity. Yet I'm convinced that Jesus is God, and I follow him because of my own religious experiences that confirm Christian theism, at least for me. So that's all I had to say. There's been a lot of stuff going around. People in my DMs, people commenting, asking, "Hey, why don't you do some kinds of apologetic videos on the truth of Christianity?" because I've done at least some videos that engage in philosophy and things like that. But this is just my response to those kinds of questions. I don't engage in Christian apologetics, or at least the historical aspect of Christian apologetics, in terms of making a historical argument for the resurrection of Jesus or for the historical reliability of the Gospels in the New Testament. I don't really get into those things because, in my opinion, after all the reading that I've done, I'm agnostic about whether or not you can prove historically that Jesus resurrected from the dead. And I'm agnostic about whether or not, historically speaking, the Gospels and even the New Testament are historically reliable. That doesn't mean that I don't believe that they're reliable. I have my religious experiences and my religious faith, and my relationship with Christ to confirm those things. But evidentially speaking, if I'm trying to persuade someone into the faith, that's not something that I would use. Honestly, I don't even know what I would use in those kinds of situations, because those things don't eventually persuade me. So that's my response to those kinds of questions. So thanks for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe and you comment. I'm willing to converse with people and have conversations about this, but ultimately speaking, I've thought about it for a very long time. I'm just not convinced, but I am a Christian. So thanks for watching.